What food should you be eating before your run for optimal outcomes? I recently created a few short form videos to post across my various social media platforms that focus on the 5 best foods and the 5 worst foods to eat before your run. These videos seem to gain a lot of interest and a lot of intrigue, with people asking me questions about why these foods are so good or so bad and what some other alternatives may be. With that said, I thought it was important to delve a little bit deeper into it and provide some more insight. So here we have a longer form video to break it down for you. My name is Sam Gerlin. I'm the founder of Gerlin Nutrition. I'm a fully qualified nutritionist and I'm a health coach. I help people harness the power of nutrition and a holistic approach to health to unlock their health and fitness goals, using endurance and performance related goals as the vehicle to get there. Today, as I say, we're going to be focusing on some of the foods that you can eat to get the most out of your runs. We're going to get straight into this. If you see me looking down here, it's because I have my laptop with me. Just because I want to make sure I'm touching on all the points that I have written down here. And I'm providing as much value for you all as possible. Before we get going, I'm going to have a quick sip of my black coffee here. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Okay. Let's get stuck straight into this without any further ado. Now, I've made plenty of videos on this channel already talking about what you need to eat and what numbers you need to be hitting in terms of carbohydrate intake, protein, fat intake, macro splits before your runs and before your training sessions. So that is not the purpose of this video. I really want to get into some specific foods and why they can prove so good, because hopefully the framework through utilizing those foods as the example gives you some more insight into what exactly you should be looking for in your pre-run nutrition. Okay, so obviously carbohydrates are going to be our primary energy source, especially in those more intense sessions. If you're running at sort of zone 1 and zone 2 effort, lower end of zone 3, we can fall back on fats a lot more, but carbohydrates are going to be our body's primary energy source. So that is one thing to take note of right from the get-go. And it's important to consider that, the foods that you eat do genuinely make a difference. It's easy to, just get on the calories just to go out there and run. But, if we really want to optimize our performance and make sure that we're recovering afterwards, it's really important to make sure that we're choosing the right foods. Okay, so a couple of general guidelines. Again, I've touched on a lot of this previously, but before we get started, I should let you know that it's a good idea, especially in general training runs, which is what we're really focusing on here today. Taking on a snack 30 to 60 minutes before is going to, make sure that you're properly fueled for your session. And aiming for anywhere between, depending on the intensity of the session, 20 up to 60 grams of carbs. Again, that depends on intensity and duration or volume of that run. It's generally, something to strive for. And some things to avoid are high fat, high protein, and high fiber foods, because they're all going to slow the digestion of the foods that you take on, and ultimately it's going to hinder the absorption of carbohydrates, which are your body's preferred fuel source, as we've already mentioned. Okay, but now diving into the foods themselves. Now I'm going to start with the best 5 foods and finish on the worst 5 foods. So hopefully, once we get through all 10 of these foods, you'll notice the patterns, so that you know exactly what you need to be doing, and you can identify alternatives to these 10 foods off the back of that. But we're going to start with a very, very popular one, which is the humble banana. Now, this is one of my absolute go-tos. A banana is going to provide you with, depending on the size, but approximately 25 grams of carbohydrates. If you're taking a banana, 30 to 60 minutes before, it's not going to cause too much GI distress. There is some fiber in a banana, of course, but it's nice and high on the glycemic index. So the glycemic index is a ranking from 0 to 100 that puts foods on a spectrum of how quickly they are digested and absorbed and how quickly the glucose enters the bloodstream, okay? And a banana sits at around 62, I believe, on that glycemic index. So it's nice and high, especially for a fruit. It's providing a bit of fructose, which can be easily broken down into glucose. Fructose is sugars from fruit, effectively, just so you know that. And obviously they're nice and rich in potassium as well. So when we're out there on our runs, depending on how much you do sweat, we're going to be looking to take on around 400 milligrams of potassium per hour. So if you've got an hour run, and you take a banana 30 minutes before, a banana actually provides approximately 350 milligrams of potassium. So, you know, you're pretty much hitting that 300 to 400 milligram range that you need of potassium anyway. So it's a really, really good option. Banana is one certainly to consider. Moving on to option number 2, which is honey. Now, honey provides, again, some really simple sugars, glucose, fructose, nice and easily absorbed. I love honey because you can pair it with anything as well. It's nice and easy to squeeze on, whether it's your banana or a couple of other foods. That we're going to mention here. Honey is just a really nice and convenient one. You can take a tablespoon 30 minutes before. Nice and easy. Honey is definitely one of my go-tos. Number 3 on my list here is grapes. Now, again, this is another fruit, but it's nice and high on the glycemic index. I believe grapes actually sit at around 70 on the glycemic index, so even higher than bananas. Again, they do contain fiber, but a lot of it is soluble, so, you know, it's dissolved in water. Grapes also contain a lot of antioxidants, you know, especially red grapes. The darker the berry, the darker the fruit, the more antioxidants they tend to contain. So that is one thing to consider. They're anti-inflammatory, which can be really beneficial. And they've got a high water content as well, so they're nice and hydrating. So grapes are a really, really good one to consider. A small handful, again, about 30 to 60 minutes before, is going to do you very, very nicely. Okay, next on the list, and one of my absolute go-tos, one of my favorites, are dates. I love a good date. Now, dates are obviously dried fruits, but again, they're nice and high on that glycemic index. I believe that they sit around 64. So, you know, there's not too much fiber in a date. There is some fiber, but the combination of soluble and insoluble fiber is actually ideal for nice and quick digestion and a steady release of the sugars within. So they've got so many natural sugars, again, a good balance of fructose, which can be broken down into glucose. They also contain plenty of potassium as well. So that is something to consider. You know, 2 or 3 dates before you run, again, 30 to 60 minutes before is going to be ideal for you. I love a good date. Who doesn't love a good date? And last on the list here for the best foods to eat are rice cakes. Now, a nice white rice cake is low in fiber, it's low in fat. You can put your honey on it, you can put your banana on it, you can put your dates on it. It's like I see it like the glue of your pre-workout or your pre-run nutrition. I love a good rice cake. Again, really, really convenient, really, really nice and easy. And that's, you know, a consistent theme with these 5 foods as well. The 5 best foods to eat. They're really nice and easy to pick up. They're not too complex. There's no need to overcomplicate it. It's just simple carbohydrates that you can pick up and snack on before you go out there on your run. So whether you're doing it during your lunch break, first thing in the morning, or, you know, in the evening before your dinner, you know, they're nice and convenient. Okay, now moving on to the worst 5 foods. Now this obviously gains a little bit more traction and interest than the best 5 foods, because often we don't want to fall into the trap of the foods that we should be avoiding. But some of these do tend to surprise people. You know, if you're well versed in the space and you know that carbohydrates are to be prioritized, then, you know, perhaps some of these foods won't come as much of a shock to you. But there's such a buzz in the nutrition and fueling and sport fitness industry at the moment about protein. And often people think that it's the miracle cure for all things. So I've seen people eat, the first on this list, steak before they go out. You know, steak, chicken, any sort of meat really, but I'm going to focus on steak most specifically because it seems to, you know, garner a lot of interest. Too high in protein, too high in fat. Obviously you can get leaner cuts, but it's still not going to be beneficial. It's just slowing that digestion, and it can leave us feeling sluggish, leave us feeling bloated. So, you know, stick away from the meats, the red meats, and steak is the specific example that I'm using here. Next on the list is actually milk. Again, I've seen people do this. A common fault that I do see is people having a coffee because they're looking for the caffeine before they go out on a run, but they'll have like a latte, which is, you know, almost 50% milk, and they're taking on close to, you know, 200, 300 milliliters of milk, which obviously contains lactose, which can be complex to digest. Milk also contains fats and protein, of course. So again, it's a bit of a recipe for disaster. And I believe that it's something like 1/3 of the world's population, 65 or 66% of the world's population are actually lactose intolerant, and people are just completely unaware of this. So it's best just to steer clear of the milk before your run. I believe that number varies from population to population. You know, in places like Northern Europe and Scandinavia, it tends to be a lot lower than that, 65%. But in places like, you know, Africa and Asia, it can be as high as sort of 90%. So, yeah, depending on where you are in the world, it's best just to stay clear of the milk either way. Third on the list, again, another health food, what I'd consider something that's really healthy, that really emphasizes the difference between sports nutrition or exercise, performance nutrition, and nutrition optimized for health. Now, there is, of course, a mid-ground, and I'm always keen to find that mid-ground, but eating something like broccoli or Brussels sprouts or cauliflower or, you know, cruciferous vegetables before your runs are not going to be ideal, simply because of the fiber content. They're really high in fiber, which can cause gas and bloating and slow the digestive process a lot. So it's best to steer clear of fiber. Fiber can also, you know, absorb water and cause a lot of water retention, which is not ideal for whilst you're out there running either. So yeah, best to steer clear of things like broccoli. Okay, next on the list, and this is one that I see, you know, so commonly, and, you know, I have to cringe every time I see it, is protein bars. Oh my God, again, I think there is a time and a place for a protein bar. If you're really stuck and you need some convenient food, it's better than the alternative. It's better than grabbing a chocolate bar if it satisfies a sweet tooth. That is my take on protein bars, but before I run, please don't bother, because again, the high protein content, the protein to carbohydrate ratio is well off. There's literally no carbohydrates or sugars in most protein bars, and it's just not optimal for running. They obviously also contain a lot of sugar alcohols and, you know, artificial ingredients and additives, which can disrupt the gut in ways that we may not know. And the last thing you want is 45 minutes into your run, you start getting that turnover of your guts and you're thinking, oh no, what's that? And it could be those sugar alcohols which have disrupted your gut health. So steer clear of protein bars as well. If you're really strapped for, you know, options after your run and you want to have a bit of protein, it might not be the worst decision. I'd always ask you to prioritize a quality whey protein isolate supplement. If you are going to supplement with protein, try to steer clear of the protein bars because of the heavy processing. But that's my take on that, a little side note there. And the final one is this is often before, you know, a run on the weekend is pretty common for this. I see people have, you know, something like a fried egg and bacon breakfast cooked in, you know, even if it's extra virgin olive oil, something that's generally healthy and that I recommend. It's just too many fats. You know, you've got saturated fats, you've got, you know, your monounsaturated fats, but overall there's just too many fats there. Bacon is obviously a fatty meat as well. So steer clear of, you know, a heavy breakfast before you go out there on your runs. And that is the last one I wanted to touch on there. So that's the 10 foods overall. You've had your 5 foods to prioritize and your 5 foods to avoid. A couple of general rules of thumb off the back of that is, as I mentioned, these are the sorts of foods that you want to be eating 30 to 60 minutes before. I've done plenty of videos on the channel talking about what you want to be eating in the 4 hours leading into your runs and how to fuel for race day. So be sure to go check out some of my older videos that really touch on that. I'll leave a couple of links in the description down below as well. Portion sizing as well is something to consider. I did mention some of the quantities that you want to be looking for in the best 5 foods to prioritize. But you know yourself, you know your body. Something like 2 to 3 dates, as I mentioned, 1 banana, a handful of grapes, a couple of rice cakes, a tablespoon of honey. But if you feel like, you know, you've got a more intense session or the volume slightly higher, you might take a little bit more, or you might adjust and take a little bit less. So it's about knowing your body on portion sizing. What have you eaten previous in that day? These are all things to consider. And this really emphasizes the complexity of nutrition sometimes and how it's important to listen to your body and just treat things iteratively. Okay. Final point is really about, again, feeding off the back of that previous point. It's about personalization and understanding your body and trying these things out. Try these different foods in training. Don't try nothing new on race day. I'm always banging on about that. Training is the perfect opportunity to try your banana or your grapes or your rice cakes or whatever it may be. You might opt for some white toast. There's another option there. You might opt for some jam with the rice cakes. just those simple sugars. So please experiment in training, find what works best for you, and don't try nothing new on race day. Avoid those 5 foods that I've mentioned and anything that you think may be similar. Obviously I mentioned broccoli there, but Brussels sprouts fall into that category, cauliflower, these sorts of foods. Steak, I mentioned that, you know, even chicken and pork and these other meats, probably not best before you go out on a run, especially in that 30 to 60 minute window beforehand. You might, you know, push that back a little bit. And if you're eating that 3 to 4 hours out, you're probably going to be okay. But 30 to 60 minutes before, steer clear of your steaks, your red meats, as I say, your broccolis, your high fiber, high fat, high protein foods. Steer clear, stick with the carbohydrates and the simple sugars. But that is the end of this video. I hope, you know, for those of you who saw those short form videos, you've come here, you've seen this in a little bit more detail, you understand things in a little bit more depth. That was the point of this video. I hope it's provided some value for you. And if it has, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe, because it really does help me out. You know, I'll be posting free YouTube videos every week for the foreseeable future, so I'm bringing plenty of value. If there is anything that you want to see, please do let me know in the comment section down below. I'm sure to read every single comment and reply and take your feedback on board, so I'd really appreciate that. I should also mention that if you do read the description down below, there is a link that will take you to my funnel, so you can learn a little bit more about what I offer as a coach, what my services entail. I have a program, a nutrition, holistic health program that, you know, leans into performance as opposed to, you know, more traditional weight loss goals. I feel like they're more tangible, they're more sustainable, and they're more conducive to enjoyment, you know, and enjoying the whole process. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So do, you know, go check that link out if it's something that you may be interested in. I've let you know it's there now, so, you know, there's no pressure, of course, but if you do want to check it out, please do. But once again, please do like, comment, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. If you've made it to this point in the video, you're an absolute legend. I really do appreciate you. I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you all in the next one in a bit.